Good evening, I'm Harold Hayes. Tonight our subject is the state of art in the state of New Jersey. We have representatives from 3 New Jersey museums, and Benita Eisler is here to introduce them. Benita?
Any museum goer who thinks of New Jersey as a stretch between the Metropolitan Museum and the National Gallery of Art is missing a lot. Take it from a recent convert. Did you know, for example, that a collection of Tibetan art unique in the Western Hemisphere is but 15 minutes away in Newark? Or that the New Jersey State Museum in Trenton boasts important works by American artists who worked in the circle of pioneer photographer Alfred Stieglitz? Or that the Princeton University Art Museum has an outstanding collection of old master drawings and prints, one of the most outstanding in America. Here to show, tell, and discuss the pleasures and some of the problems of New Jersey museums are Samuel Miller, director of the Newark Museum, Leah Sloshberg, director of the New Jersey State Museum in Trenton, one of the very few state museums with a fine arts collection, and Peter Bunnell, director of the Art Museum, Princeton University, where he is also professor of the history of photography and modern art. I'd like to begin by asking Sam Miller to tell us about the collections and activities of the Newark Museum. Sam?
Well, I've shown as my first slide the building simply to prove that Newark has a museum. I think that's one of the problems. Certainly you mentioned problems in anything in New Jersey is proving that there is something cultural happening. And the Newark Museum has a international reputation for many of its collections, and yet I can meet people and say the Newark Museum, and they'll say, I didn't know Newark had a museum. So this is the proof that there is such a museum. And next to the museum, we have a wonderful house, the Ballantine House, which we are now in the process of restoring. The city of Newark has given us, through capital projects, over $250,000 to embark on this project. I think it shows great foresight on the part of the city in giving money for this kind of activity. And the next slide, you'll see this is one of the sculptors working on the detail on the facade. The company that's doing this is a Washington-based firm, Universal Restorations, who did the work on the Renwick Gallery in Washington. And so it's going to be a very, very distinguished job. Here you see, you mentioned the Tibetan collection. Here you see our permanent installation of the Tibetan altar, which shows the various ritual objects. The collection really is one of the great ones in America.
I was staggered seeing it.
And the objects, the Museum of Natural History in New York and the Field Museum in Chicago may have more items numerically, but they have not done the research and scholarly work that we have. There's a 5-volume catalog on the collection. This is one of the great treasures that we own, the portrait of Mrs. Scott by Copley. It's interesting to note that the companion piece, the companion portrait of Mr. Scott has just recently come on the market. I'm told it's a part brunette, and I'm told it may go in excess of $200,000. We bought this portrait, the first from our members' fund back in 1945 for $10,000, which gives somewhat of an indication, I think, of the art market today. This is Captain Jenks. He was a cigar store figure located originally at Broad and Market Street, called the Four Corners in Newark. But I show this as just an example of the extraordinary collection of American folk art, of which the Newark Museum was one of the pioneers in collecting. The collection dates back to the very early 30s. These are the Frank Stellas, the bridge series. Certainly one of the great things we have of the modern American art. And they're showed there in group. This is George Siegel, a recent acquisition which we got through the National Endowment on the Arts grant, which we were able to match. And George Siegel, of course, as you know, is a New Jersey artist. This is my first acquisition, of which I'm rather proud, the David Smith, which we acquired 7 years ago. It's in the museum garden. And you can see in the back there is the carriage house, which we are also restoring through capital projects, which I hope to turn into additional exhibit space because the collection of the Newark Museum is so vast, much of it is in storage, and when you come there you're really seeing just the tip of the iceberg. And I would also hope to be able to do more for contemporary artists than we have been able to do in the past because of lack of space, and turning that carriage house into a stable. This is a show of black street art that the Exxon Corporation is circulating. I show that as just an example of the community work we do, which obviously in a city like Newark, we must concern ourselves very much with this kind of activity. One of the things that the museum is doing through a grant from a local foundation, the Victoria Foundation, is a community arts workshop in the NAACP headquarters out right in the heart of the inner city. And that's a very important activity that the museum involves itself in. And this is one of the Saturday morning arts workshop with the children, which obviously one of our main reasons for being in terms of getting our funding certainly is the work we do with school children. Last year around 65,000 school children came through on docented tours, and we form a very important link with the school system in northern New Jersey.
Thank you. The State Museum in Trenton is one of the newer museums in the Northeast, which was part of the museum building boom in the 60s. So I'd like to ask Leah Sloshberg what has been happening in Trenton in the 10 years since you've been there.
Well, the New Jersey State Museum's Fine and Decorative Arts program is focused on the American scene, but with a sharper definition given to the New Jersey component of that scene. Being a Johnny-come-lately, so to speak, building a collection is very difficult in a booming art market. We have found, however, that by focusing our collection efforts at a given point in time, that we can really make significant progress. Our recent collecting activities have been in the area of American art of the first half of the 20th century. The O'Keeffe that you just saw is one of our really superb acquisitions. It's on the screen now. George O'Keeffe was, of course, a very important member of the Stieglitz group. She was not, however, a New Jersey artist. Here we have Arthur Dove, another non-New Jersey component in the Stieglitz group. I like these two paintings in combination because of the tondo or the apse-like effect of the sun and the moon in those two. John Marin was a member of that group, and we have very good Marin holdings. I did not bring those because these are our recent acquisitions that we now have on exhibition. Here we have a flower painting by Charles Demuth, another member of the Stieglitz group, who interacted with the New Jersey member, John Marin. The next slide is of a painting by Max Weber, Fleeing Mother and Child. Again, within this school of painting. We started collecting in the area of the Stieglitz group about two years ago, and we have now acquired about 12 major works by Stieglitz group artists. In terms of decorative arts, we give our program strictly a New Jersey focus. However, in the fine arts, we are collecting actively in the 20th century, later artists, New Jersey artists in particular. This painting is by a young artist who lives in Jersey City. Her name is Catherine Murphy. She was featured in a New York Times Magazine article on how young artists survive. We bought her work, really, we were the first museum to acquire a painting by Catherine Murphy. Other important 20th century or contemporary acquisitions that we have is this beautiful outdoor piece by the artist George Rickey. We are in a center city area, and everyone was appalled that we would put a sculpture like this out in the open. But the children who visit our museum, both in a scheduled aspect and then those who just drop casually by, really treat our fine arts acquisitions with reverence when they're put outside. They enjoy them. This work is by the Chicago artist Richard Hunt. Hunt is a black artist, and we've been building a good collection of contemporary art by black Americans. And we use this collection in our teaching program. We have many minority children who visit our museum, and we definitely want to have something for that part of our New Jersey population. In the decorative arts program, as I say, we do focus on New Jersey's cultural history. Now we have on exhibition a group of objects from our collection that deal with objects used in the storage, the preparation, and the serving of food and drink. And this is a little kitchen tableau with ware chairs in it, ware chairs having been made in New Jersey in the early part of the 19th century. This installation is of pottery. All New Jersey. New Jersey was a great pottery producing state, and these jugs are New Jersey 19th century ware. We have a fine collection of New Jersey porcelain, which I will talk about in a minute. This interesting piece of folk art, it is of course Abraham Lincoln. It was made by an itinerant folk carver who paid it in lieu of rent to a Bordentown farmer. The family name of the farmer was Cooser, and the Cooser family has had an important role in New Jersey history. And so we don't know the artist's name, but we do know the history of this folk art object. For the bicentennial, we're going to have, in a way, our 100th anniversary at the museum, or our 100th birthday. The New Jersey State Museum started with acquisitions or objects that were shown at the 1876 Centennial celebration in Philadelphia. The ceramic part of the New Jersey show at that sort of World's Fair were these pottery pieces that are coming up next. During '76, we will do a Centennial exhibition. This is an Otten Brewer piece, of course, Cleopatra, and she's almost 100 years old. This is the baseball vase. Again, baseball was a sort of a new game in 1876, and these are things that 25 years ago would have had sort of doubtful collecting value, but now of course they're very coveted. And then the final one to show you that we do get outside the state in our decorative arts collection for comparative reasons is a Greenpoint ceramic object or porcelain object that was made in Brooklyn at Greenpoint. And it is, of course, another centennial piece that was shown in Philadelphia in 1876.
Thank you, Leah. I'll take Cleopatra. Princeton is one of the oldest university museums, and along with the Fogg at Harvard and the Yale Art Gallery, one of the big three. What should a visitor look for, Peter Bunnell, on a day trip to Princeton?
Well, I think, of course, perhaps the most interesting thing would be the roundedness of the collection, which it seems to me, because of our great interest and indeed our position within the university connected with the teaching of the history of art, we would therefore naturally be expected to collect in a very wide variety of areas and provide the opportunity for the public to see works literally from all periods, from the earliest to the most present time. So from that standpoint, our collecting activity is very diverse, widely ranging, and usually always with the focus of how it might relate to our teaching program, which is, of course, the natural function that one should have with a teaching museum in a university construct. The collection is installed, as one can see in this slide of an installation. We are in a building that is of two parts, one going back to the earliest 19th century building of the museum, and then in addition this 1966 addition. What you see here is the installation of the American and British 19th century painting and sculpture. The large canvas in the immediate center up high is an American painter by the name of Bierstadt, and the sculptures that surround the floral piece in the immediate foreground are anonymous 18th century Austrian sculptures representing each of the four continents. The painting collection is one, of course, that we're extremely proud of. And again, it is gathered together with a good deal of purpose to relate to our teaching program. So, for instance, in the area of Dutch mannerism, or 17th century Dutch painting, we're very strong on the faculty, and thereby our curriculum is strong, and likewise we hope to build in this area of our museum collection for these purposes. This is one of our most recent acquisitions. It's by the Dutch 17th century artist Cornelius van Haarlem, and represents the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. It's a pendant painting, actually. A second painting goes along with it. This is indicative, really. It must stand for a great many paintings in an area where we are very strong, going back to a long Princeton tradition in the arts of the Italian Renaissance. And this is Lorenzo Monaco, a depiction of the beheading of St. Paul. We have a great many very early Renaissance panels that unfortunately are in very poor condition. They went through the years of the 19th century not being very well cared for. So, for instance, one of our programs right now is a major effort at restoration of certain of these pictures in order to bring them to our public. You mentioned, by way of introduction, our drawing and print collection. This is but one, an 18th century Venetian drawing representing faith, hope, and charity. It's by Tiepolo, and it stands, as I say, for a very fine, very rich collection, particularly in the Italian field. Somewhat related to this, and perhaps the most indicative of our 20th century interests, and from a personal point of view, a great interest of mine, and that is our growing collection excuse me, of original photographic prints. This collection was begun in 1971 through the acquisition of the McAlpin collection, and we have continued very actively in this field. This is a work by Ansel Adams made about 1950 at the Cascade National Park. This is an area, of course, for a very traditional university teaching program and art museum that one perhaps wouldn't expect to find, but it's very indicative, it seems to me, of the awakening spirit of even as traditional a place as Princeton might be. Perhaps also one of our other strong areas identifiable is in Far Eastern teaching and studies in the history of art. And this bronze 1100 BC figure, a Kuang figure, again must stand for a very fine holding in this area, certainly a holding that puts us in a good place, say, between the Metropolitan and Boston on the East Coast and, for instance, Cleveland on the West, or in the Middle West. Classical antiquity was perhaps the one area where a museum connected to a university would be most likely to have its start. And indeed, our department affiliated is called the Department of Art and Archaeology. And so in this case, with this Roman bust of the Emperor Caracalla, we have this as one example for teaching purposes, again, of the whole classical and the antique period. Pre-Columbian is an area, again, of newfound interest, particularly on the part of the art history departments that have traditionally looked only to Western European art. This is an extraordinary figure, a combination figure of a teacher and a youth, dating from about 1500 BC. African, again, as with all of my colleagues here, is indicative of the tradition that we find both from the standpoint of works from Africa, in this case a kind of a West African cult figure, to how this might reflect our interest in community activity within minority groups and minority teaching at the university. It's a very active Black Studies program, and we've most encouraged by their interest and participation within the museum. And finally, perhaps our largest contemporary area of acquisition is in the Putnam Memorial Sculptures by 15 contemporary American and European sculptors. This was a commissioned group as a memorial given by the Putnam family. This is Alexander Calder's 5 discs, 1 empty, dating from about 1970, and these are placed throughout the campus, and indeed not one of them is located in the museum. We have a Picasso in front of the museum, but it provides a wonderful opportunity to see both sculpture and the newer architecture that is on the campus.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'd like to ask Sam Miller, because Newark, as you mentioned, certainly is more associated with the problems of unemployment, substandard housing, high infant mortality of its 65% black citizens. Aside from educational programs, how do you justify the luxury of a museum when you go to the city council for funds?
Well, the city council, Benita, it's really quite remarkable. There seems to be a great understanding, and also on the part of the mayor, that this is a very, very important thing in the city. If this amenity should go, then really there is no hope for a city like Newark. And I never cease to be amazed that this is understood in the capital projects. When I spoke to you about the Ballantyne House, they justify it in their own minds. I mean, I have presented this as an idea and as something that we should do, and I have gotten backing for it. But I think that if we don't build on our strengths, then where are we? And I think this is understood.
I'd like to ask Leah Sloshberg, as a state museum which is under the Board of Education, Trenton has a very small acquisitions budget, and having seen some of your splendid recent acquisitions, how do you manage to get the funds in the pricey art market of today?
Well, aside from the $100,000 acquisition budget which the state has appropriated for us, we have friends, and our friends are, of course, the volunteer support
What every
group.
museum needs.
Yes, everyone needs friends. And we have a very active group of citizens who help raise money for us, and they help get acquisitions.
Do you go to your friends and say, I just saw this marvelous
Oh,
Arthur
yes,
Dove on
yes.
the art market, what can you do for us?
We trap our friends in our deficit spending spendrome all the time. We will go out and say that, well, we've really committed ourselves to this marvelous painting, and we only have, you know, half of the purchase price. How about coming in and helping us with it? And it's this matching of state money with private funds that have helped us in our acquisitions budget for really significantly the last 3 and 4 years.
Besides the quality of Princeton's collection, the several exhibitions a year seem to address themselves to the already initiated or the connoisseur. Would you frankly acknowledge being an elitist museum in that sense for the student, the collector, the serious initiate?
That's a very strong word. No, I really wouldn't. I would prefer to put it in the context of simply dealing with quality. And I think that all of us here would feel that that really is the foremost challenge. Whether something is well known or widely known or, say, easily respected, the question is still the challenge to find the very best and exhibit it accordingly. And in our case, for instance, when you're trying to educate the future connoisseurs and the future purchasers of art, friends of an art museum, friends of a community of any kind, anywhere in the country, it seems to me one starts first with the quality and tries to make excuses for other problems later on. And I think this really is the fundamental element. Many times it's been my experience with a teaching museum in a university situation, people will say, well, just something that represents the general period will be good enough because after all they're only freshmen and so what. I don't feel that at all, and I think that it's been as strong a tradition as we could perhaps have at Princeton to try and work it that way. I think also in the sense that being a scholarly institution, we can do works, do exhibitions which may have the appearance of a kind of elitist attitude or a connoisseur's attitude, because after all, we can deal with the things that do not draw or require the drawing of a huge public. I mean, the Metropolitan can put on an extraordinary exhibition that would perhaps, apart from the people just wandering through the gallery, would not draw any larger a public than what we would in Princeton. And indeed, actually, I must say, our attendance is really rather extraordinary for a university museum. We're well over 100,000.
You're mentioning the Metropolitan brings to mind a problem of New Jersey museums and probably culture generally, which is the lure of the wicked city. And since museums with the prices in the art market really need gifts and bequests, probably more than cash unless in large quantities can do, how do you deal with the problem of the greater prestige for a New Jersey resident, let's say, to give works to the big city museums on all sides?
I could probably, from my point of view, answer it simply because I know it's going to be very different from my colleagues here. We, of course, have something going for us that really neither of the you two do, and that is the tradition and the connection that never leaves one. You are a Princeton graduate. And
Old
indeed,
tigers.
you're an old tiger. And
Collectors.
we work very hard to not let any of our alumni forget that. But it is something that, frankly, makes my job a lot easier in terms of, say, for instance, what Leah was saying of going out, because I can draw upon not only a local interest or something, but it is a continuing tradition that goes back 200 and some years.
How does that affect your way of life in trying to get bequests and gifts?
Well, I think you build on strengths. For instance, it would be considered a privilege to give something to the Newark Museum collection of Tibet. So I mean, in certain, or folk art, in certain areas where we're really strong, I don't feel there is the competition with the other institutions, say in New York. And also, I think it's a question of cultivating your trustees, cultivating friends who will think in terms of giving to the museum.
What about the New Jersey, this is with the exception of Princeton, support of younger artists, even younger than the Catherine Murphy painting, who had already been written up in the Times and showed presumably in New York, younger almost, between student and professional artists? Do either of your museums support or give exhibitions to burgeoning New Jersey artists?
Well, I think, Leah, I think your program has been more active than mine. That's what I hope to do in the Carriage House. I think that can be a very, very important thing that I would be very interested in doing.
Where do you find them, for example?
Well, first of all, once a year we do an annual juried exhibition for professional artists who live or work in New Jersey. We ask on the entry blank for birth date. We're accused of being too hip and you know, seeking out the youngsters, so to speak. But really, that's a very deliberate move, because we are always looking for young talent, fresh talent. We have a series of exhibitions in our auditorium galleries. So U-shaped gallery can accommodate an exhibition of about 40 works. We do a changing series of New Jersey artists. This series has a young focus. We change those every 3 weeks, so we really make the rounds, and we get lots of people in that gallery.
May I take the occasion to thank the three of you for coming across the river to tell us what's going on over there. We've enjoyed it very much.
We've heard many reasons for day tripping to museums of New Jersey.
Tonight, that's it for Roundtable. I'm Harold Hayes.